Welcome to Support Life, a program focusing on current social issues from a life-affirming perspective. I'm Gavin Baulch, and our guest is Richard Grant from the Helpers of God's Precious Infants. Richard, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gavin.
We were talking about family before and how important that is, and your beginning to life started a little bit bumpy, didn't it?
Very much so, because my father, an Irishman, when the war broke out, was called to work in the ammunition factory and in Ballarat. And I was born in January 43, and then my mother became pregnant a few months later after me. And unfortunately in those days they didn't have drips as they do now. And she got bad dehydration and nausea, and eventually died of kidney failure. And so my Irish grandparents took my older sister and me up to Brisbane, while my father stayed in Ballarat. And I was in Brisbane for 6 years until Dad married again. And then Bernadette, my sister, and I came down to West St Kilda, and where Dad was married with his second wife, and I now have 7 half-brothers and sisters as well. So it was pretty stormy sort of ride in the early days.
Yes, yes. But now, of course, you've got how many grandchildren?
Well, I've got 20 grandchildren, one born only last week.
Oh, how precious.
And I've got 9 children of my own, 7 daughters and 2 sons. And my daughters are calling our grandchildren some very strange names, but Frida, Daisy and Badar, and a more common one, Noah, recently. So they're interesting names.
Lovely. And that's why you've got silver hair with 20 grandchildren.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, going back to some olden days, like you spent time in the St Kilda area, your team hasn't been doing too well.
No, I've been to all the grand finals since '66, and I was there when we beat the Magpies by 1 point. And we were so close in 2009 and 10, but I'm predicting in 6 years the Saints will be premiers again.
Okay, well there's a nice prediction. But of course you were very faithful in attending these grand finals. But there was one particular meeting where you just didn't attend and you found yourself with a job.
Oh, right, yes. Well, that was many years ago in the 70s when my wife went to a meeting of the Right to Life organisation, and because she thought that I was wasting my time on monetary matters, I was involved in the South Melbourne Ratepayers Association, and she thought there were far more important issues to do with preservation, protection of human life. And she went to the meeting, and where Margaret Ty was and other very prominent people, and then she heard at that meeting that they were looking for a chairman of the Political Action Committee. And so without telling me, she told them that I was involved in sort of politics, and I might be a good person to contact to see if I'd do something. So that's what started quite a long involvement in the pro-life cause.
So if only you were as consistent in your attendance at such other meetings, you may not have been in that position, but it opened a whole door, a new venue and experience.
It did.
Would you like to just talk a little bit about that?
I had been in my own mind, I'd always thought that abortion was wrong because this is what my faith had told me, and I knew instinctively that what happened in abortion that was a taking of the human life, innocent human life, and it was a very great injustice what was occurring with abortion. But even so, I didn't feel compelled to do much about it, except for going to all the marches, the pro-life marches once a year, etc. But After the Beverley told the Right to Life Committee that that I might be prepared to do something, they then asked me if I could have a little meeting in our home and invite locals to come along where they would show slides about abortion. And when they showed a slide of an aborted baby, it really hit home just what a terrible injustice, how brutal, barbaric abortion is. And that's when I thought, well, we just have to, I just got to take a stand on this and get much more involved in the issue. Yeah.
So the visualisation of this horror is what got your attention.
That's the thing. Yes, exactly. First, the prompting of my wife, which she told me. She owned up about having told them about the possibility that I would get involved. But then it was really seeing visually what the effects of abortion are on the baby. Yes. Yeah. But as I've learnt later on, abortion doesn't just affect the baby. Fatally, it also has often terrible effects on the mother, because there's nothing more against womanhood and motherhood than to take the life of your own son or daughter. And unfortunately, a lot of women are being misinformed about this. They're not being told the truth about abortion.
And I think from a male perspective, here we are talking about a very sensitive topic. Now, you did economics,
yes,
about the labour force, the movement of people in and out of the workplace, and you were discovering that there was a change coming up when you were involved.
Yeah, that's right. There was a change in that motherhood started to be downplayed as in importance within the Commonwealth Public Service, in that they said, look, it's a sort of a Marxist philosophy that what's most important in society is that everyone is out there doing things for the economy, working. And so there was a big drive back in the late 70s and 80s in the public service, in the Commonwealth government to encourage women to go out into the workforce. And one of the unfortunate things about that is that then the workforce became more casualised. A lot more jobs were made either casual or part-time. Women were attracted to the workforce at the expense of full-time breadwinners, mainly male breadwinners, and young people. So this is one of the problems now, that just so many unemployed young people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you for that. You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and our guest is Richard Grant from the Helpers of God's Precious Infants. Richard, we were talking about some things that you had observed, but I want to look at your political involvement, and it started with a runaway car. What was that story?
Well, very interesting story that could have resulted in disaster. But right back in 1979, we were campaigning against politicians in the forthcoming state elections, and I at 12:30 after a Right to Life meeting, I parked the car at the top of a big long hill in Brunswick, and I went into the secretary's unit on the other side of the road. When I came out, no sign of the car. Unfortunately, I hadn't put the car in gear or the handbrake on. I looked down the dark, long road, and in the distance I saw a lot of people surrounding this vehicle, which was gone through the front fence of a house in Brunswick. I raced down there and I said, sorry, it's my car. And that morning I'd been on television because being interviewed on Channel 7. I had makeup on which I hadn't taken off. But the police arrived, and the police said, "You've been drinking." And I said, "Oh, I've got red eyes because I've been up late and I've been on television this morning, I've got makeup on." Policeman got into the car and came out and said, "No, you haven't been drinking, you've been sniffing glue." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, get in the car." And I got in the car and there was a very strong smell of glue. And I went and I come over to the policeman. I said, "Oh, look, they're the how to vote cards just off the press." And he said, "Give us can I have a look at it?" And he had a look at the how to vote card and he said, "Oh, that's okay, mate. We agree with you." And then he said, he said he could have fined me for negligence or something, but he said, no, he'll let me off. So we agreed with us on the issue.
Good. Well, I'm glad that you and the police can agree on something. Now, another kind of incident that you were involved in was the March for the Babies. And winding the clock forward, how did that go?
Well, last year it was very sort of controversial, of course, because there were 100 or so of the pro-abortion so-called opposition were there, and they stopped us in our tracks and forced us to go back another way, and they were throwing all sorts of objects at us, and unfortunately I hope that this won't happen again, because we've got a very important message to give to the public about what's happened in Victoria in 2008 is an absolute tragedy for our state, where where killing an unborn child is not treated differently in the law to washing your hands, because and so it's totally treating an unborn child as a non-person according to the law, and when you consider that in Victoria every week 400 unborn children are killed by abortion, well, everybody should be speaking out against this. And one of the main ways we can do something about it is to let all women know that there are organisations like the Helpers of God's Precious Infants there ready to assist them, to help them out of any difficulty they have. That's often what women need to know, that there is a better alternative and they will receive the help they need to keep their babies.
How many children are put up for adoption? What's that adoption program?
Well, 2 years ago, one of the girls in our group who hasn't been able to have a child was one of 55 couples who managed to obtain a baby for adoption. 55 in the whole of Australia. That's all there are put up for adoption. One of the problems is, of course, that many babies, so many babies don't see the light of day because they're aborted, so there's so many couples who would love to be able to adopt a baby, and one of the problems is that they just the other day outside the abortion clinic, where I go every morning from 7:30 to 10, offering girls help and saying, look, there's no need to go in there because we can help you. The mother, one of the girls with me, said to the grandmother of the baby, and this woman's daughter was there about to go in to have an abortion, unless we can talk her out of it. But the girl with me, one of our people, said, look, we can offer you help. There's no need to go in there for an abortion. This mother said, but far worse than abortion is neglecting a child which is unwanted. Well, as Pam, who was with me, said to that woman, look, abortion is the ultimate in child abuse. It destroys a baby itself. And, of course, no child is unwanted. And there's always someone who wants the child. You can adopt the baby out if you don't want to keep the baby. Yeah.
Right. One of the there's three positive elements when you are involved in approaching those who are considering abortion. It's the 3 Ps. What are they?
Well, one is public witness. To be there to say, look, we believe that abortion is wrong, So that's one of the. But more important than that is prayer, because without prayer, this whole abortion mentality just won't be overcome. Prayer, and because all life comes from God. All life comes from God. Every child is wanted by God, and thirdly, there is the offer of help to the girls. So
that's the pro-life advocacy.
Pro-life advocacy.
Yes.
Pro-life advocacy.
And it's that offer of help which translates in time, money, and opportunity of support.
That's right. Over the past 22 years that we've been outside the East Melbourne Abortion Clinic and other abortion clinics in Melbourne, but mainly East Melbourne, we have helped over 300 women who have changed their mind at the last minute. And in all sorts of ways we've helped them. Sometimes it's babysitting needed, and sometimes financial, but often it's just being there to support them, to say we're there for you. So
thank you for that information.
Thank you.
You're watching Support Life, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Support Life. I'm Gavin Baulch, and our guest is Richard Grant from the Helpers of God's Precious Infants. Richard, we've had quite a journey today, and we were talking about just being outside the abortion clinics or in the vicinity of, and the opportunity of just sharing with these young women or older women who are considering abortion. What do you find are some of the interesting comments? They're looking for what?
Well, sometimes the girls tell us that they've changed their minds at the last moment, that what they were looking for that morning was just a sign that they shouldn't go ahead, because there's a lot of pressure on girls, unfortunately, to have abortions, often from sometimes their boyfriends, sometimes their families. But instinctively, innately, all girls know that there is something wrong with abortion, in my opinion. And so girls, when the night before, they think if there's anything which gives me a sign I shouldn't go ahead, then they won't go ahead. So sometimes it's just our presence there. We are praying, and so they sometimes it's a picture of the unborn children on the street they see, and we do sometimes put out aborted baby pictures on occasions. They have told us that it was a picture of the aborted baby which made them realise they couldn't go through with this abortion. But when we talk to the girls, when we straight up front say, look, we offer any help you need to keep your child, any help. And we've had girls only a few months ago, a girl who said, is that really true? Can you? Because I've got terrible financial problems. And we said, certainly. So we go up with the girl to the local coffee shop, and then we discuss it, and then we have to further the discussion. So the next day I said to her, look, come to my daughter's house, because she lived near my daughter, the next day, and we talk things through. This girl is now with one of our supportive families, living with the family until she has a pregnancy, and we're helping her financially, but she's going to adopt the baby out because she feels she can't keep the baby. So there are over 300 children have been saved through this approach to offer them help, and they very gratefully accept it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Now let's look at. There's a lovely book that's been written. It's called Redeeming Grief. What's the history and story behind the book?
Well, the history is that one of our people in the Helpers of God's Precious Infants, Anne, who had 2 abortions herself, and she has been suffering terribly from that. But she also is a psychologist who is very highly qualified, and she decided, and she herself has now feels that she has been forgiven by God, and she can get back to living life with normality, because before that, all her mind was taken up with the guilt of having aborted her 2 babies. But then she decided, now she feels at peace again. She decided she wants to help other women, so she has started up this counselling for women who've had abortions, and there are just so many women that she's helped, and also she arranges for our group to have made plaques where women can name their babies, and we put those plaques on a memorial wall. And so it was women in our group other women who've had abortions said, can't we do something about the very high percentage of women who grieve sometimes during their lives after they've had an abortion. And research has shown in New Zealand that 78% of women have some sort of psychological trauma during their lives following an abortion. So we decided that we had to do something, and we've built a memorial wall in the grounds of St Peter St Paul's Church in South Melbourne, and we've now got 91 plaques placed on that wall, mainly including women who have had miscarriages, but mainly women who have had abortions, and they all name their babies and say a little prayer or message on it.
Well, it's important to understand that post-abortion trauma exists, and it's noted, and particularly in this book. Just a story, I was at a recording studio of a young man, made many records, and he said, what do you do, Gavin? And I said, well, I'm doing this little interview show. And when I mentioned in my sentence, the post-abortion trauma, he just hung his head, became terribly tearful, and he said, you won't believe what I asked God a couple of hours ago, and that was, he said, the one thing that haunts me, has haunted me ever since I did it, was I was the cause for a girlfriend to have an abortion. And he said, I'm just haunted by it. And we began discussing the issue, and he's found relief because he's been forgiven. But men carry this trauma as well.
They do, indeed. And many times a boy who's accompanied a girl into the abortion clinic have told us that they didn't want her to have an abortion, and even asked us, what can I do about it now, to try and stop her. But unfortunately the law says it's up to the woman to make a choice, which we say it's a baby, not a choice.
And we're pro-choice too, because we choose to support the women through their full pregnancy.
That's right.
And the caring of the child, even if it's up for adoption.
Exactly.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
You're watching Support Life, and that's all for our program today. Join us next week. Goodbye.